Thank you for inviting me. My name is Katie and I am a freelance dancer, performer, who has lived and worked partly in and around this city of Coventry for the last decade. It feels like a long time. And we're here outside what used to be the Toy Museum, a little way behind the building Ellen Terry, which used to be my place of work. And we're here because in 2008, just before one of the summer dancing festivals that I curated with Amy, Lily and Jenna, the first Making Space residency programme happened, and Sally Dean worked in this area outside the Toy Museum. And I remember this residency really well, partly because Sally worked so quietly in this space, and also because 2 weeks after the residency finished, there was a huge fire and this building was really seriously damaged. So Sally Dean, 2008, Making Space. Well, this place and the other places that we'll visit are forgotten spaces, places that people walk through and walk past but don't stick around in for very long. And we invited Sally to work here because her proposition or her question at the time was how to spend time alone in places that felt like they were alone. The first Making Space was in 2007, and it was my own, and the last one was in 2016. Making Spaces were a residency invitation for artists to come and spend time in their practice, with no call for any kind of formal outcome. So it was an invitation to bring questions or states of play for people that were movers, not necessarily dancers, to hang out in their practice in relation specifically to being in Coventry. And so many of those Making Spaces happened in places like this. I decided not to curate for a while. Once Decoda, Summer Dancing were the festivals, which eventually became Decoda. And once we put Decoda into hibernation or to bed, by that point it was really clear that my dancing was the practice that I am now full-time engaged in. And strangely, the invitation for this film came at a time where I just started to imagine that I could begin to curate again, but from a slightly different, maybe more confident place as a dancer. So how to curate as a dancer. And as a dancer, I make space for things to happen. Like, that's what dancing is. As a performer, I make space for ideas and agency to be made visible. I don't own anything, or neither do I want to, in a way. And so what Making Space did and is in my practice now, I guess, is an activism that points towards invitations being open. And so in the space in between me and another person, or me and a piece of work, or me and a project. What I practice is making room for something to happen. What happens, the form of it, in a way, matters little. But this open invitation to spend time in practice is how I am, is how I work. And now that I'm dancing and writing full time, yeah, I have the privilege of being able to really materialize the openness. That's weird, isn't it? Because that's a paradox. And letting go of the need to explain or to quantify or to justify also means that I'm not in a binary between what we might call thinking and what we might call doing. And if we don't end at the edges of our own skin, then it happens also in the architecture of the spaces that we curate or that we dance in or that we do. And it happens in my relationships, with my family and friends and people that I work with too. Summer Dancing 2010, Helen Poyner's Walk of Life practice had a bunch of us working with these beasts for 4 days. So this is Summer Dancing 2010, Helen Poyner. She traced the journey of the river under, because it goes under the city, and for the kind of sharing of her making space at the end, she strapped this big white plastic box to her back with river water in it, with a pipe, and she walked as close as she could the journey that the river takes under the city. And someone called the police, and it was the first funded one, and it was the first funded one, and I was in there, and I got this phone call. Somebody decided it might be Semtex, and like Hilary Neal, this beautiful woman from Dartmoor, was like going to bomb Coventry City. Anyway, I went and spoke to the police, and the police then escorted her, like walked with her, to allow this performance to keep happening. And then people gathered, and gradually this one woman with river water became this kind of big procession through Coventry, marking the absence and the presence of this river through Coventry. This staircase, which is part of the older wing of the Herbert Art Gallery, is where Doran George encased Florence Peake. Just there, 3 hours of encasement. It's also where Tom Marshman tap danced to the sound of knitting needles in 2010. And it's also where Florence Peake bought her paper portraits in 2009. I invited Lucy Cash to exhibit in 3 different spaces, and she worked in the old bookshop just down there, and she worked in the cafe in the crypt in the university, and she worked here in Drapers, and she curated a series of glass slides that were like a library that people could visit over 5 or 6 days. Beautiful glass slides with very finely etched trees and plants in a quite particular series. In 2009 and 2012, Eva Karzak, Chris Crickmay and Sylvia Hallett performed long durational works in this wing of the Herbert Gallery. So this is a send out for them, and the work that they performed twice here.
I'm Talia, I'm Katie's daughter, and I've been dancing in and around Coventry since I was really young. So when I was 2, I joined a small dance group run by Jenna in Kenilworth that performed a lot for Coventry Summer Dancing Festival. In the different areas. One of them, we were based on a sort of a grass field underneath one of the road intersections, which had lots of coloured sort of metal football players that we used to dance on and around. That's now, I'm not really sure what it is anymore, it's gone. Now I work with Coventry Youth Dance Company. I have done since I was 8 years old. I'm in the senior group, and at the moment we are doing some filming with the BBC for a small documentary based on one of our ex-performers from our group.